Well, we're about ready to go.
All right.
All right. Introduce yourself.
Okay. My name's Liam O'Leary. I am a professional musician, drummer. I play the drums in several bands at the moment, and that's my main thing. And currently I teach 1 day a week at Craigieburn Secondary College, teaching drums, and I'm working at Northcote Golf Course a couple of days a week. And
Playing drums?
Not playing any drums out there, just behind the bar. People come in, ask for 9 holes. I say, no worries. I'll put the transaction through and we carry on with our day. Very relaxed job, that one. And TV there, plenty of sport. Suits me well.
So you're in a band, you said?
Yes, I'm currently playing in the main ones are the 7-Ups, like a Afrobeat / kind of psychedelic rock kind of outfit, all instrumental. They've been around for about 10 years. Been playing with them for about 4 years. Also play with a guy called Ian Collard, who's been in the blues scene in Australia for probably about 30 years or so. He's had a band for a long time called Collard Greens and Gravy. Been playing with them for a couple of years. Play with a songwriter called Luke Sinclair. He used to have a band called Raised by Eagles. It's called the Luke Sinclair Band, I think. Yes. Not Experience. Maybe it should be The Experience. Playing a band that's still... I'm originally from Hobart. Still half in Hobart, half in Melbourne. 2 of us are here, 2 of us are there. But we still play. I just played with them last weekend, actually. Played at Mona in Hobart, and we played at a festival called George in St Helens. And that's called The Stitch, which is it's a good one, that one.
So that's a few. You're quite busy.
I'm pretty busy.
Yeah. All right. You mentioned the 7-Ups first. 4 years ago, you joined them. How did that come about?
I think Trent, the main guy in that band, he was looking for a new drummer, and my name just came up as a suggested person, and it's pretty funny getting into that band. He called me and said if I'd come and do an audition, which I was like, audition? That's interesting. I just feel like within the industry, that's an audition's probably like some sort of music theatre gig or something. But this was an audition for the 7-Ups. And he said, he gave me 4 tunes to learn. And when I listened to it and he told me the whole thing, I was like, yeah, I'm pretty keen to give this a crack. So I even took a day off work when I was doing a bit more scaffolding. Used to do a bit of scaffolding. Took a day off work to learn the songs properly, like really had them down. And then I rocked up to the rehearsal, or to the audition, and it was a very tight feeling in there. Very, hey mate, how's it going? Kind of vibe. And I was, it's like, oh, yeah, good, hello. And sort of sat down at the kit. No one's really saying anything. And then I was like, should we do the tunes? And it's like, yep. And we just played through the 4 songs. And they just basically went, great, we'll let you know. I was like, okay. I was there for about half an hour. And then, because they had another drummer to come in for another audition. I heard they auditioned about 12 drummers or something, which was just, a funny experience. And I didn't hear back from Trent for about 6 weeks, because I remember going to a rehearsal in the same spot and they were doing the same thing about a month later. And I was like, I said to the guys that I was rehearsing with, I was like, I did that about a month ago. And they were like, oh, you mustn't have got the gig. I was like, yeah, I must have. And then a couple of weeks later, Trent said, oh, do you want to do it? So that was funny.
How does that make you feel as a drummer, being made to audition and knowing other people are being auditioned?
Oh, I didn't I didn't mind at all. Everyone's going to have their own process. It was almost just the whole act of that just seemed funny to me. But it makes sense. They just obviously wanted to hear a lot of different people and get a vibe, I suppose. And I was lucky enough to get the call. But I didn't feel. I've always been very, I feel like when you're playing music or any kind of group-related artistic kind of thing, if I've never had a problem with being kind of sacked or not getting the gig, because it's, everyone's different and you just need to find the right person. And even if you've been in something for a while that doesn't end up working out, I don't know, there's always going to be something to play, something to do. So I've always just taken that kind of thing as it comes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm also wondering kind of what it's like entering into someone else's band, maybe not just 7-Ups, but anyone else you've joined or played music with, where the music's already written and you're essentially playing someone else's song. What's the process like with you as the drummer? How do you approach a situation like that?
I basically try and serve what's already been done. So I really, particularly that band, I really, it's felt very like the recordings are very strong, and I basically just learnt what the tunes were, almost note for note, really. And then through that process, you do end up finding your own little ways of going about things. Like some of the grooves in particular were things that was I wouldn't have probably come up with that myself, or definitely actually. There's a couple of them I was, really impressed. Say impressed, it was just really cool what Ed played on a lot of those things. I really like it. So I just try and pull that off as best I can, and then through that you might change a few things. But ultimately I just try and play what was already there and try and do that to the best of my ability. And then, I've had the opportunity now. I've played on the last 2 albums, so they were written, since I joined the band. So you're going to get your opportunities to.
So they were drum parts that you wrote.
For
that one, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you build that trust
with the band?
With the band or a group of musicians, how do you build that trust where they trust you to write good parts and contribute, I guess, positively to a piece?
Well, hopefully you've just been chosen because they are already choosing someone that they would trust what you would be doing regardless. I know with my own music, I'm always looking to just pick the right people for the occasion. I don't, while there might be slight moments of suggestion or, maybe something's a little bit specific, but for the most part, it's just I'm choosing you because I like your playing and I feel like you're going to serve this song or album or whatever. So you just leave it up to them. And I feel like that's happened with 7-Ups. I've, very occasionally there'll be a bit maybe not this, maybe that one you were doing, or it's yep, sure, and end up fine. But I've never had a problem with that, especially in the 7-Ups. I've basically just come up with my parts and maybe a bit of, massaging things here and there. But yeah, I just try and find whatever is feeling the best and just go from there. Yeah.
Actually, I want to kind of jump around now, and I want to go down to earlier years, learning drums.
Mm-hmm.
And all. So, I guess how did it start?
Well, for whatever reason, I was pretty keen on the drums. Don't really know why. I don't remember any particular like inspirational moment. I just really wanted to play them. And I remember when I was like 7, I'm from Hobart, but I grew up in Alice Springs for quite a while. And when I was about 4 or 5, I think, we moved up to Alice Springs and we were back in Hobart for a holiday. And I do remember going to the music store with Dad, and like the whole row of drum kits are right there in McCann's as soon as you walk in. And I do remember going, I want one of those. And Dad's like, well, can't really do that right now, especially going back to Alice Springs. So we walked out with a really cheap mouth organ, harmonica, which I never played. But I don't know, I just had a thing for the drums, and I didn't start playing till I was in grade 7 when I was 12. And yeah, I just remember getting the sheet of music, like everyone's going to have a crack at whatever instrument and like circle the one that you want to do, and I just, very automatic, it's like just drum kit, just circled that. Started getting lessons and just went from there. Started getting lessons, grade 7, and I don't know, I just was really into it. I just felt very simple really. I just tried to learn whatever my teacher gave me, which I did. I just would learn anything he gave me. And every week it would just slowly. And I wasn't particularly like talented naturally at all. I was quite behind some of the other kids that started, which really annoyed me. Especially kids that had already started a couple of years prior. I hated that. I was like, if I'd started when I was 10, I'd be just awesome by now.
Probably contributed to your work ethic then.
Maybe. But I just felt like I was just learning everything along the way, but there was something there. I was just very keen. I was very, very keen. And pretty quickly, you're like kind of getting into kind of grade 10 sort of thing. And I just had it in my mind. I was like, well, I'm just going to play drums. And everyone's asking, what are you going to do with, when you go to grade 11 and 12, what are you going to study and, go to university or whatever. But it was just like, well, I'm just going to play the drums. I didn't really think about anything else. So, yeah. And I got lucky because, luck. Who said it? Is it Bob Hope or something? The more I practice, the luckier I get. I joined my music teacher's cover band when I was in grade 10, which was a big thing. Like, I just asked him one day, I was like, do you know Up on Cripple Creek by the band? And he was like, I do actually. He's like, I play that in my band. He's like, we're actually looking for a new drummer. And he was thinking about it now. This is a bunch of like 50-year-old dudes. And it's like, hey, should we get this 15-year-old kid to come and play drums? And there was one guy in the band who wasn't too keen on it, but the other guys were, fine with it. Just get this enthusiastic kid in. But that was really good for me.
Was that your first experience playing live then? Yeah.
Apart from playing in school stuff, playing in like grade 7, grade 8 band. I mean, I remember joining the senior band when I was in grade 8, which felt like a huge deal. Going home, Dad, can I join the senior? I've been asked to play in it. And I was just absolutely stoked on that. But so we'd play live, if you like, at school and like, fairs and stuff. But as far as a professional and paid gig, grade 10, it's 15.
15, and you got paid?
Yeah, got paid like $250. It's unreal.
That's big money.
It's
at that
great
age.
money.
It's big money.
It's still big money.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm happy to hear that it's still big
I know.
money,
I just
Liam.
got paid $200 for a gig today.
And so, I guess drumming's split into genres, I guess, isn't it? Like
Sure. Music in general.
Like music. And so what were you planning? What were you playing at that time in these early years?
Kind of, a lot of just kind of stuff of the day. Well, not even necessarily of the day. I remember playing whatever rock bands I was in. Like, I was basically in a Rage Against the Machine cover band. Just, me and my mates. So playing a lot of Silverchair, Rage Against the Machine, Limp Bizkit. Bit of Green Day. Just stuff like that. Stuff you learn in school and you playing with your pals.
All fun bands.
Yeah.
And you're...
But also
you've
jazz
evolved,
as well.
haven't you, as well? Into... what would your genre be now?
Oh, I don't really have one. I've always liked being versatile, or try to be at least. I don't know. Recently, I've kind of wondered if I just get bored easily or something. Because I've always I did start playing jazz when I was in grade 8. Because I had a mate of mine who was quite a talented piano player and could play jazz standards and things. And our music teacher put a little combo together, quartet, where we were learning standards. So I did start trying to learn how to sort of swing from a pretty young age. And I really liked it. I really, I'd listened to Kind of Blue, the, Miles Davis album. That's basically everyone's story of, that's where jazz started for them. Same sort of story for me. Learning, All of Me and just other jazz standards. And I loved it. I love listening to that. I mean, now I feel I really like that kind of era of late 50s, 60s kind of jazz. And started, having a crack at that. And again, just would learn things along the way. Wasn't necessarily obsessed with it, but I just kept learning things as, time kept going by.
So the style you're doing now, say with the 7-Ups and the other acts you're associated with, would that be jazz drumming or I guess rock and roll? I don't know anything about drumming.
Yeah, well, the 7-Up stuff's pretty groove orientated, a little bit Afro, but also pretty straight up and down, just rock stuff, really. I say rock. I kind of struggle knowing how to describe these things sometimes, but playing with Ian Collard, that's just straight up and down, 50s, 60s kind of blues stuff. And that's just heaps of shuffles. Just that style of music, Jimmy Reed, Little Walter kind of things. But playing with songwriters, always liked playing with songwriters. That's a different kind of, very minimal kind of drumming, if you like. Well, that's the kind of stuff I like to try and play. And, trying to get the sound of the drums very particular to whatever thing that you're doing. I can get a bit lazy with that. I do get lazy with that. But I try to keep that in mind, especially for recordings and stuff. But, with my own stuff that I write, with my own sort of band, that's pretty jazz. That's pretty straight up and down jazz stuff, but also write things that are totally not that, way more Afrobeat. Or, I don't know, influences from anything, really.
Can you explain some of the differences between these styles? Afro, jazz, rock?
I can try. I suppose jazz-related playing, it's probably generally more... I was going to say more complicated, but that's not probably... maybe it's more involved in a lot of ways. You tend to have to learn a lot of stuff to just kind of get by. It asks a lot. You kind of, dynamically... you need to be versatile. You need to be able to play at lots of different speeds. Be able to solo well. Soloing can be really hard. That's something I've kind of almost feel like I have to work a lot at that. And soloing in a sense that, playing solo kind of jazz drums is one of the most sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of isolated. It's a very vulnerable thing because there's nothing else going on around you. You're the one keeping it all together, but you're also playing all this stuff. So that all of those kind of things go into what you might say what jazz is, and like it can get very technical, you know, and dynamically. But again, like and sound of cymbals and things like, you know, like for me, it's like I'll have lighter hi-hats that are very crispy and a very nice, you know. Well, actually, my ride sort of taste sometimes changes, but generally a really clean, really crisp, nice sounding ride cymbal, you know, is what you'd want. Whereas maybe something like the 7-Ups I'd have like bigger hi-hats that are heaps darker and fatter, and like a snare that's heaps, might still be cracky, but it's not nowhere near as like tight and crispy as a jazz kit might be. Like a jazz drum kit tends to be quite, got very high tunings, like the toms are really high, the bass drum's high and very ringy, and the snare's really high and crispy. Whereas 7-Ups, it's like fat toms. I still like to have them a little bit high, but something nowhere near as high as a jazz drum kit, and bigger sizes too. So that kind of changes things. And then, yeah, the playing aspect, it's way more like repetitive, I suppose. And like the 7-Ups is pretty high octane kind of thing as well. You're playing.
It's music you can dance to.
It's music you can dance to. Give the people what they want. It is a dance band. It's a good festival band kind of thing. And, you know, I'll just be laying down some groove ages, you know, and it's high energy. And, you know, there's one spot where I'll take a solo with the percussionist, but for the most part, I'm just trying to lay it down as best I can. And, you know, you play the odd fill here and there, but for the most part, you're just cranking it down. And like blues playing, for me, probably closer to the jazz setup in tone-wise. Not quite, not as high, but still like it to be a bit high. And for me, like that sort of stuff, yeah, just grooving, like just staying on a shuffle really, really solidly. Whatever fills you play are very... I'm speaking for myself as well. Like other drummers might have a different take, but, you know, very simple fills, just really being an absolute engine for everyone else to do their stuff over the top and just create a kind of atmosphere, I suppose.
Yeah, and that brings me actually into something I'm curious about is the writing process. I mean, how does it work? Does it start with the drums? Does it start with a melody, and how do you decide what the drums should sound like when you're writing a song?
As in, like, if
with others,
yeah, like a song that they've written. I think for the most part, whoever's writing a tune, they would have written the tune, so it wouldn't like necessarily be coming from the drums first. I mean, occasionally some bands I'm in. I was in a band called New Saxons for quite a long time that was based down in Hobart. They had some really cool tunes. Sometimes, because we used to just jam a lot just together, and sometimes Tim Green, the guy's name is, whose band that was, occasionally I might just start playing something and then he'd like come up with a riff, and it was very much just like, well, we've just come up with that a bit together rather than him coming in with something. But for I'd say 99% of the time, you know, like the 7-Ups, Trent just has the songs written and then he comes in with them, and then it's just a matter of like, he starts playing it. He might have an idea of how the drums might want to go, and I'll go off that and might change it a bit. But that would be the process. We just start playing it, see what's working, see what's not. And as far as writing a piece, like it's kind of, you just end up riffing off things that you already know, of course, because there's nothing else you can really do. Unless you're, I don't know, coming from some whack angle of like, I'm just going to completely reverse everything I do. But I guess I don't really do that. Maybe sometimes I do. I don't know. You're just going, it's like someone starts playing a riff and you'll tend to just have a thing that comes up in your mind. You just start doing that, see if it works, change a few things along the way. Normally it kind of is really the sort of first thing you kind of think of, though, for the most part.
So when you're leading, say, the creative process in, say, some other project, I guess a song would be built around your drumming?
Sometimes. A lot of the stuff I write, sometimes they come from the drums. But even in if it's a melody or a riff or something, might literally be like something I'm kind of melodically playing around the drum kit. Or I might just start having a riff come up in my head while I'm practicing something. But I mean, it depends. If you're doing something that's heavily drum orientated, like that's the kind of focus, then that's a bit different. I suppose sometimes I do enjoy, like, when I've only been recording at home for a couple of years, but I do enjoy like just layering drums. It's like there's nothing else but drums going on here, and I'm just like, there's like 10 drum parts of different things that I'm trying to like layer and make work together. And that can be the foundation for something that is added.
Is that something that's commonly done? Like, is that something that
I mean,
drummers do?
It's almost like I'm vaguely thinking of like some sort of, really kind of African kind of almost cultural sort of thing where it's like, there's a whole bunch of people playing drums and like this is the gig. Like this is what's going on. Maybe people are singing and it's just singing and drums. But like the drums are like you could just listen to the drums by themselves. It sounds unreal. It's just layering and so many people playing all these things and it sounds so together. But as far as writing tunes for me, I actually, most of the time it's just me having an idea in my head that I just sing into my phone. And then it's kind of like, okay, what drums do I play to this? So often it would just be how most people would probably come up with a tune. But sometimes it is very drum orientated, but not all the time. Bit of both.
I mean, you're a drummer. Can obviously can you overdo it on the drums?
Oh, of course.
How do you know where to pull yourself back a little bit?
Well, hopefully it's just your own sense of musicality. Like hopefully it's just like whoever's listening to it would know that it's too much. And just because I'm the one coming up with it, I would like to think that I'm someone that's like, oh, that's way too much. It's not working. It's in the way of everything else going on. So, I mean, yeah, anyone can overdo anything, and particularly drums. Like, drums is just the foundation to pretty much, music, really. So when the foundation's not there or it's not working, then, you need to change it. It's like if your mattress and bed frame isn't any good, then it's not really going to work. No matter how pretty the sheets are.
What about underdoing it?
Yeah, underdoing it. That's always annoying.
How do you recognise it? Does somebody else tell you, or is it something you can spot?
I mean, maybe. Sometimes it is annoying if you've recorded what you've done. I'm thinking of times when, like, I've listened back to something and it's like, oh, I could have actually gone harder then. But I was holding back because it's easy to go the other way. So you end up coming back too far. And it's like, oh, actually, I should have picked my moment there. Maybe I could have gone off a bit more. But you can only do what you can in the given moment. Because maybe how you were feeling at the time wasn't what that was, but it's only until a month later, once it's already done, that you're like, oh, now that all the other parts are in, it's like, oh, maybe I could have gone with that more, or, But I mean, that's just the nature of, life. You can only try and... I mean, it is hard to read those moments sometimes, especially when you're recording, because unless you've got a mountain of time and time to have like that month where you're just still experimenting and recording like you would professionally or whatever for an end product. It's like, oh, okay, now that we can see all the parts, now we can actually really see how everyone needs to play in them. Whereas at the start, it was like, oh, we didn't know we're going to come up with that guitar part later or something. And it's like, oh, you could have reacted to that more, but it wasn't there at the time. So it's just part and parcel of trying to come up with those things. So.
All right. Well, I think it's time to step out of the studio and
Oh.
into the world
Okay.
and talk about gigs and touring.
Right. I thought you meant physically right now. Like.
Oh no,
Let's
I
get
didn't
outside.
mean I didn't mean the podcast is over. No. I mean, do you like? I'm sure you like playing gigs, but do you like touring?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do.
Is there any part of it you don't like?
I mean, gigs. I mean, like anything, I suppose some gigs can maybe feel stale. Like, I don't know, maybe you're not feeling totally up for it that day, or you're just tired and you're not really giving it everything you possibly could, or maybe the gig's not going as well as it could. I mean, that's just all, it's like anything. So you're not going to rock up to work every day and have the most amazing day. But no, for the most part, like I have always wanted to play the drums, and playing live's awesome, and touring. I mean, I haven't toured like that much, but I have done some. I did a 3-month trip around America with a band called OPEP, and that was a bit of hard work, just because didn't really it's a bit of fractions within the people involved. And I look at that back at that now, and it's just like, I probably should have just chilled out a bit, and just I mean, it was intense. Driving every day, it's pretty tiring.
Well, what was happening? Was it just a lot of arguments and stuff like that, or
Pretty much, just different views on things.
are we talking about non-music related views, or?
I suppose some of it was musical, but a lot of it was just people stuff. Being in the same van for 3 months in the car together. Don't even know these people very well. And then, I mean, that's a whole story, How much do I get into that?
You can get as much into it as you want, Liam.
Gotta be careful, Dave. Gotta be careful. I mean, look, now I feel like I was just mentioning Julia Bishop before, and now I'm turning into a politician. I'm glad you brought that up, Dave. It was more, I think it's more of just a lesson learnt in, I said yes to this gig that really wasn't much, no money, basically, which was kind of dumb. I should have negotiated something better for myself. But I was 25. I had just moved to Melbourne. Someone says, do you want to come to America for 3 months? And it's just like, well, yeah, of course I do. I don't care what you pay me, kind of thing. And then that becomes okay, I'm going absolutely broke over here. And actually, I'm getting so unbelievably underpaid for what I'm doing. And we recorded an album for 2 weeks in Canada. It was an amazing experience. It really was. I love looking back on all of that. And I'm glad because I was going to potentially just leave the tour. Because my friend that was playing bass, he didn't actually get in, we recorded in Canada, but he couldn't get into the States because he had a DUI from 4 years prior. So he had to go. So it was just me and the 2 girls whose the band it is. So that was a bit oh, okay, great. And it's not to say that we're all getting along like an absolute house on fire. I mean, it's funny because I guess I consider myself someone who I'm pretty good at just sitting in with people however they are for the most part. I can stay pretty patient and but I was, it was hard work and a lot of gigs, a lot of travelling. It's just a really tiring thing to do.
So how do you handle those, I guess, interpersonal moments of tension and things like that? Is there a technique you have maybe to mitigate it, or?
Yeah, drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, that's a common story in music, isn't it?
I basically just decided to have a really good time. So whenever I had the opportunity, which was pretty much most days, I just was taking myself out to wherever we were. I mean, it was cool, 10 days in Nashville. I'll just go and hang out with whoever and meeting new people. It was funny, I actually met more people in Nashville at that time than I had met in Melbourne, especially in the music scene. I met Luke Sinclair, the guy I mentioned before, and I a whole bunch of people in that sort of scene, that kind of country singer-songwriter kind of scene. Like, I met Ruby Boots and Liz Stringer and Luke and forget who else was there. They were the main ones I was hanging out with. And that was good because like meeting those guys led me to, I ended up doing a tour with Geordie Lane, sort of a year after that, like the summer after that. All because like those guys suggested getting me because they saw me play in Nashville.
Less fighting on that one?
Way less. No fighting. None whatsoever. Geordie and Claire are the best people. And, met like Richard Bradbeer, bass player, he's a great dude. Met him on that with Geordie. So there was, it was a good trip. Met heaps of cool people. The guy that we recorded with in Canada was awesome. Like he's a really big name over there. Oh my God, Dan. I can't remember his last name. Anyway, like in Nova Scotia, we were. It's 2 weeks recording at his house, which is on basically a private lake. It's just like, what's not to love about that? So it was a good experience. But what was your question again? What's it like doing gigs and touring?
Yeah, pretty much so. I think you answered it.
Yeah.
So what was America like? Well, how's it actually? The question I want to ask is the difference between Australia and American music scenes.
Yeah, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Like, we have this kind of generalized idea of the general American that we kind of love to bag out, this overly earnest, very American-centric kind of person. And I suppose the American-centricness is kind of, well, actually not even. I found everywhere we went, the people were just so nice. Like, they're very genuine over there. And the whole earnest thing, it's just like they're all about, you just do what you do. I don't know why, they're a bit like you Australian people, you're a bit sort of shy about what you do. There's none of that. No tall poppy kind of syndrome. And I thought it was just really nice. Like, even if we're playing a small club to 10 people or a heaps bigger gig, everyone was just everyone's listening. Everyone was just really nice. All the quality of, like, the sound people over there are really great. Like, I went up to this guy in Philadelphia who was doing sound at this gig. I was like, what is it with you guys? Like, you just seem to nail it. And he was like, well, it's pretty simple. If it's too loud, turn it down. If it's not loud enough, turn it up. I was like, what is it within Australia? Like, every sound guy's got to make the kick drum just the loudest thing in the world. And anyway,
why do you think that is?
There's a crack at Australian soundies. Not all soundies.
Is it a cultural thing, maybe?
I don't know what it is. It's like we're in the 80s still, and it's just like, got to make this massive sound. And it's always got to be the kick drum. And it's just like, you listen to recordings or anything, it's just like, it's not, no, I mean, sure, some styles of music, the kick is, listening to some trance music or something, it's like, yeah, okay, fair enough. But we're not playing trance music, we're playing other stuff. But yeah, America was awesome. Actually, the best story I can tell you, to sum that up, we're in New York playing at CMJ, which is this like industry festival. It's just like bands going there to try and get signed, basically. And it goes for like 10 days or something. And, we'd been on this tour for like a month or whatever. And I'm like, geez, everyone's nice, It's like you play a gig in New Orleans, everyone's just sitting there having a great time and they're talking to you and everyone's just really nice. We get to New York and we played at this thing, I think it was in Brooklyn maybe. No, it wasn't. Somewhere. And there was this real Aussie cohort. Sounds Australia, I think, put it on. So there's heaps of Aussie bands are there. And I'm just at this thing, whatever. I go up to the rooftop and there's a big barbecue going on. And I'm walking around, all these people are kind of head down like, what's going on? Kind of attitude. And I was like, oh, this is a bit weird. And then I realised everyone around me is from Australia. Everyone's from Melbourne and Sydney. And they're just way too cool for school. leather jackets everywhere. I was like, oh, okay, here we go. You know what I mean? And it's just like everyone in America just wasn't like that. They're just like, hey, how's it going? So anyway,
it's funny. I actually would have thought, maybe it would have been the opposite.
Well, exactly. That's what I thought.
Australians have a reputation for being like friendly larrikins.
Yeah,
I don't know where it comes from.
Totally.
I have no idea.
I'm making a few real generalised things here, but
that's why it's fun.
That's why it's fun. I know. That's why you wanted me here. No, I mean, I know what you mean. I kind of had this real expectation around everything. But I don't know. I was just like, I don't know. It was a very different sort of vibe I was getting. And yeah, even when I'd travelled to New York, like a few years before that, just when I did my own, solo trip, and I stayed in New York for like 6 weeks or something. And I don't know, just everyone, it's just really easy. There's something, I don't know. Maybe I'm relating it to, I don't know, inner city kind of vibes or something. I don't know. I don't even know. What am I saying, Dave?
Can you see yourself going back there, maybe even moving there if you had the opportunity? Would you?
Oh, I mean, I've never really thought about moving there. I mean, I kind of did a little bit. Actually, we played on this thing in Nashville, and I 3 years later, Jim Lauderdale, this kind of famous guy from Nashville, like songwriter guy, we played on this kind of show that he had, and a whole bunch of bands did, a lot of Aussie bands too, and I forget the guy's name, but he was from Australia and he'd been over there for a long time, and the drummer that was like the house drummer, he was a really nice guy who let me play on this like end of the concert jam. So everyone's up on stage. Ended up playing this shuffle. And this guy came, the guitarist dude who seemed like a bit of a big wig there. He really was very complimentary about my playing. And I saw 3 years later, he'd messaged me on Facebook, which was in, the kind of hidden part of your messages, and I was like, who the hell was that? And he was really like, are you staying in Nashville? Would you move here? I'd love to play, get you on board if you were here. And I was like, oh, I didn't see that. Saw it 3 years later. That was
probably too late.
It was a bit, and because I'd met those people that have lived there and just being there, it's like, this just, it's like living anywhere, really. It's just another town with heaps of musos in it. But I don't know. I've never made the plunge, though. I've never gone over to do it. Would I do it, though? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I do like living in Australia. I think I did realise that a bit. Even Hobart to a degree, it's just a nice part of the world to be, and kind of maybe there's some sort of element like, well, I am from Australia, and it's like I'd actually, kind of when you do a bit of travelling, it's like, I do like living in Australia now that I've sort of been here, or I mean, I've never actually lived anywhere else, so I wouldn't actually know, but maybe, I don't know.
You mentioned at the start of the podcast you work at the golf course,
yeah,
which is not music related.
No.
So how do you? I guess, especially because musicians need to, occasionally at least, go interstate or abroad. How does that affect your job, and the kinds of jobs you can get? And
yeah, it can be tricky. It's always like, the priority is always to play music, so whatever work you have needs to work around it. So it's basically just always having a casual job. If anything's too locked in, then that can be a problem. But yeah, I mean, had a few different casual jobs along the way. I have at times just played music, which can be a bit of a struggle, even just in the nature of like, you tend to just wait on money a lot. It's like contract kind of work in a way. But just to take the edge off, it's just worthwhile having something else. And I think I used to feel very like, if I do that, then I don't know, want of a better term, like you're a slight failure or something, like you can't make it work. But I think I'm a bit, I'm definitely over that. I think actually having other work is kind of good for you, just doing something else. And like I like doing heaps of other stuff. Like I'm massively into sport. I love playing whatever, play golf, play tennis, love watching footy, love watching snooker, love playing pool. I like try and do yoga every day. What else do I do? There's other stuff.
So is the goal to do music, I guess, as your only source of income? I mean, would that be a welcome thing in your life?
I mean, of course, if that was the case, that would be unreal. But it's kind of, I don't know. It's like 1% of the actual music industry does that. It's very small. It's very like how many bands actually pull that off or how many people pull that off. Very, very small to how many musicians are out there. Even good musos. People that are awesome. People that are actually playing really good gigs and getting paid well still have part-time jobs. Because, a place like Australia, I mean, what, you can tour the country in 2 weeks. And then what? Like, you got to wait another 6 months. So unless you're in, like, 10 bands that you can maybe pull that off, and there are people here that do that. Like Richard Bradby seems like someone who does that. Lockie Kane. O'Kane? Kane? What's Lockie's last name? He's a great drummer. He plays with Richard in, like, Vicar and Linda and Angie McMahon and people like that. Like I haven't spoken to him for ages, but I get the feeling that he's probably on that front doing quite well. I don't know if he works another job, but there's plenty of musos out there that, are needing to have something else on the go. So I don't see it as any major, like, failure or anything. It's just, I kind of see it now as like, well, I am doing what I like, and I'm able to prioritize it, and I'm happy to be able to do that because some people don't even do what they like. So,
yeah, and I agree. And you're definitely not a failure, Liam. But it makes me think. Okay, that limits your choice, let's say, of jobs you can get, and do you feel like it's a risk? Obviously, everything's a risk, but where you're like risking that traditional career and stability for your passion. I mean, how do you weigh that risk up in your head?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I just kind of take it as it comes. I'm just kind of, there are some months that are great. It's like, oh, wow. If I had as many gigs as I did this month, I'd be totally fine. But I don't. And, like, maybe one day I will. Like, I don't know. Maybe, I'm getting a lot more, hopefully, organised with my own music. And, it's nice to think that maybe that could do something. Maybe that could make me some really good coin. I don't know. But I'm just going to keep trying until I'm dead, basically, because I know I'm happy with that. Because for whatever reason, it's going to continue to spark my interest. And I'm always going to prioritise it. Otherwise, I don't see the point. So I'll just, as long as that's always there, whatever I need to do to just help, make that work, I'll just do it. But, I don't find it too hard with that balance. I've always felt pretty strong with, like, I know what I like to do. And it'll always be my priority. And anything else can just... some jobs I've kind of basically just said no to after a while because it's just like, well, it's not working for me. And it's like, why isn't it working for you? It's like, well, I can't do this thing that I just want to do for myself. It's like, how much money does it earn you? It's like, well, not much. But I don't care. It's like, I don't want to look back on my life and just be like, oh, well, at least I took that job that, like, I just can't live with that. Because there's something wrong with me, Dave.
Yeah, I know why you're saying that.
For everyone watching out there, Dave once said to me that there's something wrong with me in the sense that there's something wrong with all people that have this kind of passion. Why is it that we prioritise it so much? Don't know.
Yeah,
Just matters.
I'm still trying to find out.
Yeah, we'll continue to work.
I got one more question, Liam.
Okay, mate.
What makes a great drummer?
Whoa. What makes a great drummer? Let me think. I think someone that is able to serve the music in their own way. Like, I was going to say perfectly. Maybe it's perfectly. Just someone that's able to serve the music for what it needs in their own way. He's probably the perfect drummer.
Oh, I thought you were going to elaborate a little there.
No, mate, that's it.
No, that's it?
Kaboom. Oh, I don't know. It's a hard one. What was the question again?
What makes a great drummer?
What makes a great drummer? Yeah, what makes a great drummer?
Oh, actually, how about
It's a hard
this?
one.
In your eyes, who is the greatest drummer and why?
Oh, no. Oh, no. I have a problem with decision making. You know, it's been one of my problems. So that's a hard one, man. Here's the answer. I don't have one. Okay, is that not...
And there goes the why.
There goes. No, I don't know, man. Like, you know, I'm so obsessed with just people being like, you know, I'll just throw out a few people then. Like, in the jazz world, especially that's where my head's at the moment, because I've been kind of listening and sort of transcribing a few solos. Been really big on the solos recently. Like Max Roach, one of my favourite jazz drummers. He just like, you know, and it's just for me. I mean, for heaps of drummers, but he's just so unbelievably melodic with his soloing. He's just, you can just hear him play and you just know it's him. Same with like Art Blakey or Billy Higgins or like Vanell Fournier with the Ahmad Jamal trio. It's just like, yeah, that's Art Blakey. Like, I just love that kind of stamp that people have created for themselves. And it's almost like they've just worked out their thing and they're just doing it. And like, maybe everyone's doing that. But, you know, maybe some do it better than others. Like, is it a question of like just being able to be comfortable with yourself more, or combined with the fact that you are putting a massive amount of work into like playing the drums, and like you've worked out the things that work and what don't work for you. So there's no in between. It's just like, this is where it's at. I like that kind of vibe in players. And it's the same with heaps of drummers, like, I don't know, Stuart Copeland with the Police, or John Bonham, or like Questlove. Love Questlove. He just sounds like Questlove. It's just like, that kind of thing is, you know, that's a great drummer, I think. Yes.
I think that answers the question. Thanks, Liam, for coming along.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for having me, Dave. The sun's just come shining through.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you.
Namaste.